Good morning, everyone. Hope everybody can hear me. My name is Jennifer Corbett. I'm from OSC State Payroll Services, and I'd like to thank you for attending today's 2021 Fall Conference presentation, Know Your W-2s. The presentation is being offered by the Bureau of State Payroll Services, and your presenters today will be Katrina Snyder and Diane Moore. I'm going to go over a few housekeeping items though before we get started. Your microphones are going to remain muted throughout the presentation. Using your headphones will increase your sound quality. This session is going to be recorded and will be available shortly after Fall Conference finishes. Fall Conference finishes next week, so you'll be able to see it then. At the very top of your screen, you'll see a little blue bar. If you expand that, it'll display your WebEx controls. Questions during the presentation can be entered into the Q&A feature featured in those controls. Those questions will be monitored. We will not be answering questions during this particular presentation, but if you enter them there, any questions will be either answered directly to your agency if it only pertains to your agency, or in the document Q&A questions that will be posted along with this presentation when it's posted to the web. If you are having any technical difficulties during the presentation, try signing back out and back in either using Chrome or Edge browser. That may help. If you still have issues, go ahead and email payroll@osc.ny.gov for additional assistance. You'll receive a survey to complete after this presentation. Please complete it and submit the survey so that we can continue to improve your fall conference experience. And now I'd like to welcome Katrina and Diane as your first presenters today. Some basic information and instructions to know about W-2s can be found in the IRS Publication 5, Circular E. Employees should receive their W-2 by January 31st of the next year. So for 2020 W-2s, they received them by January 31st, 2021. Earnings on the W-2 are totaled using the monies when earned, not when paid. So for the 2021 W-2s, earnings will cover the checks of January 6th through December 22nd, 2021 for the administration cycle, and January 14th to December 30th, 2021 for the institution cycle. If an employee works for more than one agency and it is the same company like New York State and New York State or the City University and City University, they will receive one W-2 for all earnings in all agencies. If they work in more than one agency in different companies, they will receive one W-2 for each of the companies with the earnings paid in each company. Beginning last year with the 2020 W-2s, the IRS allowed OSC and all employers to mask the first 5 digits of an employee's Social Security number on the W-2s that were printed and mailed. Any W-2s printed off of NYSPO, New York State Payroll Online, or by the agency or on the View W-2 Forms page in PayServe will have the full Social Security number on them. Okay. The agency the employee works for will be the return address on the outside of the W-2. And if an employee did not opt out of receiving a paper W-2, the mailing address from PayServe will be used to send it to. If the employee doesn't have a mailing address, then it will go to the home address. It is important to verify and update your employees' addresses, especially at year-end. You can refer to last year's Bulletin 1890 for information on the content of the 2020 W-2s, which is attached as a meeting handout. Each year, a new bulletin is issued in the beginning of January as box information may change or be added. There are 2 attachments that are issued with this bulletin at year-end that are very useful references. Attachment A lists each box in their description, and we will get into more detail on these boxes. Attachment B is useful for calculating an employee's taxable gross for federal, Social Security, and Medicare by showing some of the pre-tax deductions that are taken before the tax is calculated. Millions of taxpayers receive a W-2, but not everyone knows how to read it, especially when it comes to the many W-2 boxes and W-2 codes. Here's an actual W-2 form, and we can see what appears in the various boxes. Minnie Mouse has left Disney and came to work for New York State. Box A, sort of middle, lower, shows her masked Social Security number. Box B above it is the Employer Identification Number, or EIN. This shows the EIN for New York State. There is also one for the City Universities and SUNY Construction Fund. Box C on the upper left is the employer's name and address. This will always be State of New York, City University of New York, or SUNY Construction Fund. We do not display Box D on the W-2. You will not even see it. We do not, Box E is the employee's name and address. Box 1 on the upper right shows the taxable federal wages. This number comes from regular earnings minus any pre-tax deductions. You can reference attachment B in Bulletin 1890 from last year to see what deductions are taken out. Minnie had pre-tax deductions for Tier 6 retirement dues and health insurance that reduced her federal taxable earnings. Box 2 shows the total federal tax withheld from all paychecks for the tax year based on the employee's filing status of married, single, or head of household. Box 3 are wages subject to Social Security tax, which could be different than Box 1. Again, you can reference attachment B on what is taken before the Social Security earnings is calculated. Minnie's Tier 6 retirement contributions are not pre-taxed for Social Security or Medicare, so only her health insurance was taken to reduce her Social Security earnings. For 2021, the maximum Social Security earnings should not exceed $142,800. This was an increase from 2020 of $137,700. Box 4 is the Social Security tax withheld. It is taken at a flat rate of 6.2% with a maximum tax withheld for 2021 of $8,853.60. In 2020, the max amount was $8,537.40. Box 5 shows wages subject to Medicare tax. Again, this may not be the same amount as Box 1. Box 6 is the amount of Medicare tax withheld. This amount includes a flat 1.45% tax on all Medicare wages and an additional Medicare tax of 0.9% on Medicare wages above $200,000. As for tips, Box 7 and 8 in the middle are not used by OSC, and there is no Box 9. Box 10, the amount here, if any, represents dependent care benefits from a dependent care assistance program. For Box 11, the section shows the total amount distributed to you from your employer's non-qualified or taxable deferred compensation plan. Next to it is Box 12. This box includes certain deductions, elective deferrals, or benefits. It is one of the more complicated boxes with codes ranging from A to HH. Minnie has code DD, which represents the cost of her employer-sponsored health insurance. The amount for this Box 12 DD health insurance is uploaded from a file given to us by Civil Service, City University, courts, or CWA. and we report it on the W-2. Some deductions, like deferred compensation, come in on files from vendors like Nationwide, and OSC withholds them on the employee's paycheck, and the total is reported on the W-2 at year-end. If there is more than one Box 12 code, they will be listed as 12A, 12B, and so on. Codes and amounts listed in Box 12 are informational only to the IRS, and you can again refer to Bulletin 1890, Attachment A, for what the code letters stand for. Box 13 in the middle, you'll see the retirement plan checkbox. This is checked for employees who are eligible to participate in a New York State retirement plan. This box will always be checked unless the agency informs us that it should not be. And again, this is done at year end and a bulletin is issued. The third-party sick pay box is checked for employees who have received third-party sick pay benefits from an outside vendor like MetLife, DC 37, or Teamsters. Box 14 reports other amounts. The codes and descriptions are created by the employer. Code 414H that Minnie has represents her retirement contributions. Some other more popular ones are EDA for educational assistance, IMP for imputed income, NYSPFL for the New York State paid family leave, and the newer codes for COVID leave, which Diane will talk about later. The amounts for some codes like EDA, Educational Assistance, or CLEPR, Certification, Licensure, and Exam Fee Reimbursement, are uploaded from files submitted by GOER or the various unions at year end so they can be added to an employee's W-2 as taxable earnings. This may not be actual money received by the employee, but are taxable benefits, and a popular one is the prepaid legal for City University employees. Attachment A in Bulletin 1890 lists more codes and their detailed descriptions for Box 14. Box 15 on the bottom left is a two-letter code to identify which state wages were reported to, and Box 15A is that state's ID number. Box 16 is for state wages. You will notice that this is the same amount as listed in Box 1 for federal if the state code is New York. This is required by New York State Tax and Finance for New York State wages. Box 17 are the state income taxes, again withheld based on the employee's filing status. Box 18, if an employee lives in certain zip codes of one of the 5 counties of New York City or in Yonkers, the wages will be listed in Box 18. These wages may not match the state wages if the employee only was a resident of New York City or Yonkers for part of the year. In Box 19 is the local tax withheld. For New York City, the rate is based on the employee's filing status, and for Yonkers, it is a flat rate of 2.30815%. This is a new rate as of July 2021. And Box 20 shows the locality. P0001 for New York City residents and 84000 for Yonkers. All wages and taxes are pulled from the tax balances table in PayServe based on paychecks and any adjustments made to an employee's records. Let's look at another W-2. You will see that this employee's federal taxable wages are much lower than his Social Security and Medicare wages. He had multiple pre-tax deductions. He has multiple Box 12. 12E represents elective 403B contributions, 12DD for his employer health insurance, and 12G for his 457B deferred compensation contributions. He also has a couple of codes in Box 14 for 414H retirement contributions and he is in one of the participating bargaining units for New York State paid family leave. For the next W-2, this employee shows that he has some Box 12 deductions and local wages and taxes for New York City, as he has lived in Queens County for the entire year. Diane will now talk about some COVID leave. Morning, everybody. I am going to talk about the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. This was a continuation of the COVID leave that was permitted by the federal government. It was passed into law in March of 2021 this year, but it took effect as of April 1st, 2020. This is different than the New York State policy that permitted no charge to accruals when vaccines are obtained by New York State employees during their work hours, and that went into effect as of March 12, 2021. The American Rescue Plan Act extended the tax credit to eligible employers from April 1st, 2021 through September 30th, 2021 for leave taken by employees to obtain the COVID-19 vaccine during work hours. Next slide. OSC issued bulletin number 1943 in September that went over the process for the vaccination leave. As part of this bulletin, we included a template for agencies to populate their employee vaccination information and submit it to OSC. We have to rely on agencies to submit this information because it is not in PayServe. Given that employees were allowed up to 4 hours of no charge to accruals, we can't really reflect that in job like we did with the other COVID leaves last year. So therefore, that's why we do have to rely on whatever information is submitted by agencies for their employees. When we get this information, we will be reflecting it on the employee W-2s in Box 14 as either paid sick leave or family medical leave. Next slide, please. So on this slide, I just took a screenshot from a W-2 from last year. And as you can see under Box 14, you'll see in this particular example for Code 19F paid sick leave, it shows as W-2 code CLF. On the next screen, there is an example for the other two types of leave, 19P and FMC. Those are the job codes that you would see in PayServe. On the W-2, those codes would show as CLP or FMC. Next slide, please. And this is a screenshot of what the template was that was part of the Payroll Bulletin number 1943 that we issued last month. We asked agencies to fill out this information and to submit it. I believe we asked for the due date for this Friday. We do anticipate receiving a lot of employee data, and we will need the necessary time to go through this data so that we can properly reflect it on the W-2 come year end. That concludes my part of this presentation. If you have any questions regarding the W-2 information, you can submit an email to the Tax and Compliance mailbox. If you or your employees have information concerning the W-2s or their tax returns, we do ask that you refer them to the IRS or the New York State Department of Tax and Finance, or if they're in another state, the other state's Department of Revenue, or that they should consult with a personal tax professional. Thank you for attending this presentation today.